Let us begin with question number 21. Let us read this question. Suppose we have following data about a simple economy. C equals to 20 plus 0.75 YD, I equals to 100, G equals to T and that is equal to 40, where C is consumption, I is investment, YD is disposable income, G is government expenditure and T is tax. Find out the equilibrium level of national income and what is the size of the multiplier. Now this is not a new type of question for you. Now you can identify what category this belongs and you should be able to attempt this question on your own. If you are able to do it correctly, very good. If you are not able to do it correctly, no problem. You can later on identify from the solution that I would present. Let us move forward and check whether you have done it correct or not. So y equals to C plus I plus G. I am sure you would have identified that this is Keynesian theory 3-sector model. So you can define these variables. Y is national income, C is consumption, which is A plus B into YD, and the variables value have been given in the question, which you are informing as and when the variables are defined. Now once you put all these values in the equation and when you start solving the equation, you would get the final outcome as y equals to 130 plus 0.75 y and y minus 0.75 y will be 130. So y will be 130 divided by 0.25, that will be 520. So you may conclude that the equilibrium value of y or the equilibrium income is 520. Let us move ahead and write up further. The multiplier value will be K, that is 1 divided by 1 minus MPC. MPC stands for marginal propensity to consume. So you know how you have to work it out. It is 1 divided by 1 minus 0.75. So it will be basically 4 times. So the size of the multiplier is 4 times. Let me show you an alternative way of presenting the solution, which we have done earlier as well, where we directly use the y formula. We don't derive value from one to other. We directly arrive at the value of y using this particular formula. And keep in mind one thing, 1 divided by 1 minus b, that is 1 divided by 1 minus marginal propensity to consume, or you can call it as 1 divided by the marginal propensity to save, that is inverse of the marginal propensity to save. That would give you the size of the multiplier, and when size of the multiplier is getting multiplied to this term, it will directly give you the amount of national income. So because you have used all the variables in this equation, you define each of these variables along with their respective values. The value of y is definitely unknown, we have to find it, and other variables where the values are known, you just keep substituting the values, and finally when you land up at the value of y using this term, you should understand that it is still the investment multiplier getting multiplied to this net amount of saving, and that would result into your national income, that is y equals to 520. Let us move ahead and practice another similar question, that is question number 22. This time I am not even going to read the question. You have to read it, understand it, correctly interpret it, try it out, and let us see whether you get all accurate calculations. Now in your fair notebook, you are supposed to write down the proper presented solution, what I am showing on the screen right now. But your ultimate objective is to look into whether you were correct with these calculations or not. So when you start your solution, you just write up the main equation as y equals to C plus I plus G, and you define all these variables and wherever the value of the variable is known, you define those values along with the definition of variable. And once you have done that, you put up all the values in the equation and try finding out the value of y. When you keep solving the equation, and you will come across a situation where 0.2y equals to 136. So value of y will be 136 divided by 0.2, that gives you 680. So the equilibrium value of y will be 680. As the question has asked you to find out even the value of the multiplier, you should now logically understand one thing, that inverse of 0.2 will become the value of multiplier. Inverse of 0.2 is basically 5 times. So can you notice one thing, 136 is becoming 680 only when you are dividing it by 0.2. Dividing it by 0.2 as good as multiplying the same by inverse of 0.2, which is 5 times, and that 5 times represents the multiplier value. Anyway, we are going to present that multiplier value as well. Let us move ahead and find the value of the multiplier. So multiplier, as I have explained, it will be the inverse of marginal propensity to save, or you can call it as inverse of 1 minus marginal propensity to consume, which is given as 0.8. So 1 divided by 1 minus 0.8 will give you 1 divided by 0.2, which will be 5 times. Let us move ahead and look into the alternative way of presenting the solution. In this alternative mode of presenting the solution, you directly write the final formula version of y, and of course, if you are following this version of the solution, you will have to define each variable systematically along with the values of variables given in the question. And once you do that variable defining task, you can start substituting values of each of these variables in the main equation, and you get to know that eventually you will be landing up at the same calculation, that is y equals to 680. It's just the alternate way of presenting the solution. So you can choose any one way, whichever is convenient and comfortable to you. There is no need to present the solution 2 times in your examination. Whichever way is convenient for you, follow that. Let us move ahead and take up the next question for practice. That will be question number 23. Let us read this question. Suppose the structural model of an economy is given C equals to 200 plus 0.75 into YD, I equals to 400, G equals to T, that is equal to 200, and TR is given as 100. Find the equilibrium level of income. First of all, what we should understand is this is definitely a 3-sector economy, correct? Because government is involved. Secondly, we find that there is involvement of TR, which stands for transfer payments. So the disposable income, you know how we work out, it will be income minus tax plus transfer payments, correct? As a result, this will be exactly similar to the earlier questions with the new inclusion of transfer payments in this particular question. So as usual, what I will do is I will ask you to try out these calculations as part of your rough work, and when I show the solution on the screen, that is the time when you should note down these solutions systematically in your notebook. Let us check whether your solution went correct or not. So because G equals to T, it's a balanced budget, and the equation under 3-sector economy goes as y equals to C plus I plus G. You know it very well. You will define all these variables, and when it comes to C, it will be A plus B into YD. A value is given as 200, and marginal propensity to consume, that is B, is given as 0.75, and as far as disposable income, that is YD, is concerned, you should keep in mind that here tax is definitely involved along with the transfer payments. As a result, YD will be Y minus T plus TR, that is y minus 200 plus 100, and I stands for investment, that is 400, G is government expenditure, that is 200. Let us move ahead and substitute the value of the variables in the main equation, and when we do that, this is what we get. So we have even substituted the value of YD, what we found as the disposable income, that was income minus tax plus transfer payments, and finally when you start solving this equation, what you get at the end is 0.25 y equals to 725. So y will be 725 divided by 0.25, and that would give you 2900. So equilibrium value of y or equilibrium income will be 2900. So if at all somebody asks you what would be the value of the multiplier over here, simple logic is it will be inverse of 0.25, and that will be basically 4 times. That is why 4 times of 725 would also give you 2900. Let us move ahead and write up the alternative version of the solution, and let me remind you, in this alternate form of solution, you don't have to write both the versions of solution in examination. I have been telling you this so many times. You just have to write any one version, whichever is convenient for you. Just the one new point over here is this includes the component of transfer payments. So what we will do is we will write the y formula with the second situation where transfer payments are included, and when we define all these variables, at the next stage we are going to substitute the value of all these variables in this main equation, and we would determine the value of y. Let us move ahead and continue writing further. We are now substituting the value of each of these variables in the main equation, and what we get is exactly going to result into the value of y. So making sure that you don't end up making any error in calculation, you would eventually land up at the same value, that is y equals to 2900. As the question did not ask anything else, we have just stopped our solution over here. Once again, let me tell you, you don't have to write both the versions of solutions in examination. Any one is fine. Let us move ahead and take up the next question for practice. That will be question number 24. Now, I am not going to speak anything over here. This is very much similar to question number 23. On your own, you read the question, you understand and interpret the same. Before I show the solution, you should be ready with your version of solution. You may just do the rough work, and noting down the solution in the fair notebook should be done once I display the same on screen. Let us see whether your solution matches with what I am showing on screen over here. Accuracy is the most important thing. If you are not able to get accurate answers on your own, you are not considering yourself prepared to face the examination. So it is very important that you keep trying, and you should be getting answers on your own, and that too correct. What I am still helping you out is with the manner in which the solution should be presented. I have noticed one more thing: many students, they don't write up the variables properly. They just do the calculations in their answer sheets in exam, and they end up losing marks. I don't want you to have that kind of tragedy with you. So you should make sure that your solution presentation has to be very, very systematic. Alright friends, once you have written the main equation and defined all these variables, you know what we have to do next. We have to substitute the value of these variables in the main equation to get the value of y. Let me remind you, this is a case of 3-sector economy where transfer payments are included with respect to determining the disposable income. And when you are substituting the value of these variables, what you eventually get is y equals to 507.5 divided by 0.15, that is 3383.33, which will be the equilibrium value of income. Let us move ahead and write up the alternate version of the solution. Though in examination you have to write any one version, but when we are practicing questions, you should be having complete convenience to handle any version of solution that comes on your way, so that Sometimes when you are finding institute suggested answers or RTP questions or MTP questions which are solved little differently, you should not get confused. If you are aware of different ways of presenting the solution, confusion won't come in your way. We are now going to substitute the value of these variables in the main equation, and that will finally give you the value of y. Though the answer is already determined by you earlier in the previous version of solution, we just put it across once again over here by this different approach, and when you apply that, obviously you are going to get the same result. It is basically the same thing. The earlier version of solution was equation based, this is more of a formula based version. Either way, it is going to take same amount of time, so it is all depending upon your convenience. Let us move ahead and take up the next question, that is question number 25. Let us read this question. For a closed economy, the following data is given. Consumption C is given as 150 plus 0.5 into y minus t. Investment is given as 160 and total tax is given as 50 plus 0.1 y, and government expenditure G is given as 200. Now first of all, look at one thing. The tax function over here is given as a constant amount, that is constant autonomous tax, and then a portion of tax is dependent on the income as well. So this is a different scenario under the three sector economy, and over here, if this is the tax function, your equilibrium income, that is y, it will always be equal to C plus I plus G, that you know it, right? However, C over here is dependent on y minus t, and y minus t will require the tax function, and tax function is given as 50 plus 0.1 y. Considering this factor, you just have to work out the overall calculations of equilibrium income, and the question is also asking you the value of multiplier. Though we have solved this type of questions earlier, but what I will do is, once again let me guide you through this, and then once we are done with this question, I'll give you time and opportunity to practice and attempt questions on your own. So let me show the solution over here. What we do in three sector economy is write up this equation, y equals to C plus I plus G, and then what we do is we define all the variables, that is one by one each of these variables defined. And when you are defining C, look at one thing, what we have done. The function is given as C equals to 150 plus 0.5 into y minus t, and then because the tax function is separately informed as 50 plus 0.1 y, from y you are subtracting 50 plus 0.1 y within brackets. Because outside the bracket there would be a negative sign, both the values 50 as well as 0.1 y will be with negative signs. Basically 50 as well as 0.1 y both are representing tax, and tax has to be basically subtracted from the income. So there is no question of any plus sign coming in between. Plus sign would come only when there are transfer payments. So the information is very clear. You just need to now solve this equation and find the value of y, and when you do that, you will be getting the final version of equation as 0.55 y equals to 485. So y will be 485 divided by 0.55, and that will give you 881.82. Let us move ahead and work out the value of the multiplier, which is also demanded in the question. Because here tax is a function of income, the multiplier value goes this way: 1 divided by 1 minus b, and b gets multiplied to 1 minus t. So keep in mind one thing, this 1 minus t is applicable only to this b. So what you will do is, you will always solve this part first and then subtract it from 1. So let us define the variables over here. K is the multiplier, B is the marginal propensity to consume, which is given as 0.5, T is the tax, which is 0.1. This small t represents the portion of tax which is dependent on the income, or you can call it the proportion of tax that is dependent on the income. So 0.1 is the value of this small t. So when you are putting this value, k equals to 1 divided by 1 minus b into 1 minus t, and that will be 1 divided by 1 minus 0.5 into 1 minus 0.1. So in order to solve this correctly, what you need to do is first deal with this bracket part, that is 1 minus 0.1, which will give you 0.9. That 0.9 should be multiplied to 0.5 with a negative sign, which will give you negative 0.45, and then from 1 you deduct 0.45 to get the value of the denominator. This is what I am trying to tell you. So it will be 1 divided by 1 minus 0.45, and that will be 1 divided by 0.55, and that comes to 1.82 approximately. We just now go ahead and take the alternate version of solution. So the alternate solution can be presented by directly writing up the formula of y in a situation like this, and when you do that, you have to definitely define all the variables. Without defining variables, if you are simply making the calculations, it is not going to work. And either way you present the solution, the result that you get will be exactly the same. So once you define all these variables, the next task what you have to do is put up the value of these variables in the main formula for computing y. Let us move ahead and start substituting the value of variables in the main formula for computing y, and when you do that, be little careful about plus and minus signs, and if you just be careful enough, there will be big chance that your calculation goes accurate. In simple words, in order to achieve accuracy, you should always have complete concentration on the calculations that you are making. Now I am taking you to another similar question, that is question number 26, and this question you just have to solve on your own. As usual, I will give you some time to try out the calculations. You make the rough calculations as a rough workings and keep the answer ready. When I show the solution on the screen, you should then write down the systematic solution in your notebooks. So as of now, don't bother about presentation, you just make the correct calculations. Accuracy is your objective. Let us check whether you got it right or not. We will be again putting the solution by both the versions, that is equation way as well as the direct formula way, and you should be comfortable solving it either way. Check whether you got it correct or not. What I am getting over here is 0.49 y equals to 334, and y equals to 334 divided by 0.49, that comes to 681.63. Check whether you got the same thing. If you got the same thing, very good. If you did not get it, see what went wrong in your solution. The next thing that the question is asking you to work out is the value of multiplier, and because in this side of the equation you see that it is 0.49 y, and the value of y can be determined when 334 is divided by 0.49. In other words, the inverse of 0.49 will be the value of multiplier. As simple logic as that. So let me show you the calculation of the multiplier. So you know the answer already, just systematically try to present the calculations over here. K is the multiplier, B is the marginal propensity to consume, and T is the tax rate which is based on your income, or the proportion of tax based on income. And when you carefully handle these calculations, always I have been telling you that this portion of the calculation, that is 1 minus T, should be solved first. That value should be multiplied to B, and then the whole thing should be subtracted from 1. That norm you must always follow, and when you do that, what you are getting is 1 minus 0.51 as the denominator. So in the denominator, 1 minus 0.51 will eventually give you 0.49. So multiplier value will be 1 divided by 0.49. This is what I have told you earlier as well, and that investment multiplier value comes to 2.04 approximately. Let us move ahead and go with the alternative version of solution. Over here, you directly write the y formula, and keep in mind one thing, that this is the third situation in the three sector economy where we have learnt different versions of tax information. This is the third situation out of that, where a portion of tax is autonomous constant tax and another portion of tax is a proportion of tax which is dependent on your income. Keeping that in mind, obviously when you write the y formula, you will have to define all these variables. Defining variables is important, do not ignore it. Let us try to substitute the value of these variables in the main formula for computing y, and when you do that, as I told you earlier also, you should be careful with these plus and minus signs, and what you should apply as first calculation and what later, you should be careful about that. So it is inverse of 0.49 that gets multiplied to 334, or simply 334 divided by 0.49, which will give you the equilibrium income as 681.63.